The crowd inside the crystal hall stood silent, waiting, holding their breath. At the center stood the tiny alien princess, no taller than a child. Dressed in silver robes that shimmered with the colors of her house, her violet eyes looked ahead, cold and quiet, while the high priest raised the bonding crystal high above her head. This was her 5th ceremony, and once again she showed no emotion, no reaction. Everyone hoped this time would be different. The bonding ritual was the most sacred event of her people. Every royal must bond before their 18th star cycle, or lose their title forever. But she had refused every chosen mate so far. Not once had the bond responded. Not once had the light appeared. Some whispered she had no soul. Others said she was cursed. The council grew nervous, the nobles angry, and her father, the king, shamed. Still, the princess didn't care what they thought. She didn't want to fake a bond, didn't want to lie, didn't want to follow a rule just to make others happy. She had watched her mother cry for years, bonded to a man she never loved. Now she was gone. And the girl refused to follow the same path. The chosen suitor stood before her. A proud warrior from the northern tribes, tall and strong. He looked confident, sure that the princess would finally accept the bond. The priest began the chant, calling the stars to witness the connection. Everyone leaned forward, eyes wide, but the princess didn't move. Her hands stayed at her sides. Her face blank. The crystal pulsed. Once, twice, then dimmed. Nothing happened. Gasps echoed through the hall. The warrior stepped back in shame, his face red. The priest looked at the king, confused and embarrassed. The king's jaw tightened as he looked away. Once again, the tiny princess had rejected the bond. She turned and walked slowly down the steps. Alone, no one followed, not even her guards. Whispers followed her like wind. Cold-hearted. Someone said, she's not fit to rule. Another hissed, she should be exiled. But she didn't look back. She walked through the long palace hallways, her small feet silent against the marble floors. Outside, the night was quiet. 2 moons glowing softly in the sky. She found a place in the garden, hidden under the glowing trees. She sat, breathing slowly, pressing her hand to her chest. It didn't hurt, but it felt empty. Something inside her longed for something real, something true. She didn't want to bond with someone just because the law said so. She wanted to feel it deep, honest, soul deep, but maybe she was broken. Maybe that kind of bond didn't exist. Behind her, a soft sound made her look up. A man was walking nearby, carrying a toolbox and humming to himself. He wore no armor, no royal cloth, just a simple worker's uniform. He was human. The palace had recently hired humans to help fix the ancient systems. This one looked older than her, maybe in his mid-20s, tall, with short brown hair and calm eyes. He didn't notice her at first, just focused on the pipes running. Under the fountain, she watched him silently, curious. Why did he seem peaceful? He was in a palace full of cold stares and sharp tongues, yet he looked like he belonged. No fear, no hunger for power, no interest in her title, just doing his work. Like it mattered. Then, without warning, he turned and saw her. Their eyes met. He didn't bow, didn't panic, didn't even speak right away. He just gave a gentle nod and said, "Didn't mean to disturb you, princess." His voice was calm, like warm wind. She blinked, unsure how to respond. No disturbance. She said, softer than usual. He smiled slightly and went back to work. The princess sat still, confused. Why did her heart feel strange? It was like something inside had stirred, but not fully awakened. She stood up and walked away quickly, cheeks warm. That night, she couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the human's eyes, his voice, the way he didn't treat her like a prize. She didn't even know his name, but somehow She couldn't stop thinking about him. Her people believed only their kind could bond. Only alien to alien, soul to soul. But something in her heart whispered, what if that was a lie? What if the bond didn't care about species, power, or rules? What if it only cared about truth? The tiny princess looked at her reflection and whispered, I saw something in his eyes. And far away, under the palace, the human finished his work. He didn't know it yet, but today, he had touched something no suitor ever could. The edge of her soul. The next morning, the tiny princess woke before sunrise. Her long silver hair fell over her shoulders as she stepped onto the balcony. The twin suns were just starting to light the sky. But her thoughts were still in the garden, still with him. She didn't even know his full name. Only that he was human. Only that he didn't bow, didn't flatter, didn't try to impress her. He simply saw her, spoke gently, and went back to work. It was the first time someone looked at her without fear or greed or shame all day. She tried to forget him. She read ancient scrolls, attended court meetings, listened to boring suitor proposals. But her mind drifted again and again to that one moment. That calm voice, that quiet gaze, that tiny smile. She hated it, but she also craved it later. She asked one of the palace AI units to tell her about the human workers. The screen showed a list. She found him quickly. Eli Harper, systems technician, age 26, from Earth. No criminal record, high emotional stability score, and excellent repair skills. No family on the planet, no connections. Just a quiet man doing a quiet job that made her even more curious. Why had someone like him made her heart stir when princes, warlords, and noble sons had all failed? That evening, she left her chambers without the royal guard. She walked alone, through servant tunnels, into the lower halls. No one noticed the princess dressed in plain robes, not even the humans working there, except one. Eli saw her the moment she stepped into the corridor. His brow lifted in surprise. Princess, he asked, setting down his tools. I'm not here as a princess, she said quickly. Just call me Linari. He looked unsure for a moment, then gave a small smile. All right, Linari, he said. No bow, no nervous glances, just a gentle respect. They walked slowly down the hallway. She asked about his work. He told her about the broken power grid, the leaking coolant pipes, the silent alarms that needed fixing. He didn't try to impress her, and strangely, that impressed her more than anything. He asked nothing about the bond, nothing about her failed ceremony, nothing about the shame echoing through the palace walls. Why aren't you curious? She asked softly. Eli shrugged. It's your business, not mine. She tilted her head. Everyone else wants to know everything about me. Maybe they want a piece of you, I said. I just want to fix things. That line stayed. With her, maybe he didn't want her title, her bloodline, or her throne. Maybe he just wanted her peace. For the first time in weeks, she laughed. Not a fake laugh for the cameras. Not a forced smile for the nobles. A soft, real laugh that made Eli stop and smile wider. Your laugh sounds better than the royal announcements, he said. She rolled her eyes. You're terrible. I try, he replied, grinning as they reached the lower garden doors. She hesitated. She could feel the bond string pulling faintly in her chest again. She had felt it once yesterday, the first time their eyes met. Now it tingled again, like a small light blinking in the dark. Why are you here? Really? She asked, her voice almost a whisper. Eli looked at the stars above, then said, I left Earth because it was too loud. Too loud. She repeated, confused. Too many voices. Too much pain. Too much pretending, he said. Out here, I can be quiet, useful, honest. She nodded slowly, her heart beating faster. You're strange, she told him. He chuckled. You're the first person to say that nicely. She looked down at her hands, delicate, royal, untouched by war or work. Do you think someone like me can be real? She asked. Eli looked straight into her eyes. You're already more real than most people I've met. That answer hit her harder than she expected. She turned quickly, hiding the tear that slipped down her cheek. I have to go, she said, and walked away before her voice could break. Eli didn't follow. He stood alone in the hallway, watching her disappear into the shadows. Back in her chambers, the princess sat in silence. The bond string inside her chest pulsed again, slow and soft. Not a demand, not a command, just a feeling. She touched her heart, eyes wide. This wasn't like before. This wasn't arranged, forced, or chosen by council vote. This felt natural, wild, quiet. She whispered to the empty room, "What are you doing to me, human?" And somewhere below, in the mechanical rooms, Eli sat against a wall, staring at the ceiling. He didn't understand what was happening, but he knew one thing for sure: he wasn't afraid of her. And maybe, just maybe, that's why she noticed him at all. The temple bells rang louder than ever before. Every sound echoed across the capital city, reaching the cold mountain peaks and glowing river valleys. It was the day of the final bonding ceremony, the last chance for the princess to prove she was worthy to be queen. The people gathered in the grand temple, dressed in bright robes and covered in glowing jewels. The council wore black armor with silver crests. Sitting high on the judgment platform, the king stood in the center, face like stone, eyes cold and distant beside him. The princess stood still, dressed in white, her head held high, but her heart shaking. She had not seen Eli in days after their walk. The palace guards were told to keep humans away from the royal chambers. Her father had found out about their meeting. Someone had reported it. The king had screamed behind closed doors. "You will not bring shame to this throne," he had said, but it was too late. The bond string inside her chest had already awakened. The chosen suitor for this final ceremony was the Prince of Norik. He was tall, proud, and glowing with cosmic tattoos. He had trained for this moment, certain he would be the one to break the curse. He smiled at the princess as he stepped forward. She did not smile back. The high priest raised the bonding crystal again. This time, the crystal floated above their hands. Glowing faintly blue, the chants began. Ancient words of unity and soul connection. Everyone leaned forward, waiting, praying, but the princess felt nothing. She looked into the prince's eyes, saw nothing. No spark, no warmth, no truth. Her chest stayed silent. The bond string did not move. She lowered her hand. The crystal stopped glowing. The priest froze. The chants fell quiet. Gasps filled the temple. The silence turned into murmurs, then into shouting. She failed again. Someone said, "She's cursed." Another cried, "She rejected the royal bloodline." The king turned his back on her. The council stood up as one and declared, "Princess Lenari is hereby unfit for the throne." Her title was stripped, her place in the line broken. She was no longer the crown princess. She was no one. Lenari didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just stood there, frozen, like a statue carved from shame. And then, through the noise and madness, a voice rose from the crowd. "Wait." Everyone turned. A human stepped forward from the far side of the temple. He was dusty, his uniform stained, but his eyes were clear and steady. It was Eli. "Stop," he said again. "She's not broken." Guards rushed forward to grab him. But Lenari raised her hand. "Let him speak," she said, her voice calm but sharp. Eli stepped into the center, eyes on hers. "I don't understand your rituals," he said, "but I know this. She is not cold. She is not cursed." He pointed to his chest. "Something inside me changed the day I met her." The council shouted, "This is forbidden." humans. Cannot bond, this is not your place. But Eli didn't flinch. He looked at Lenari, and she looked back. Without words, they both stepped forward. Their hands touched, and in that moment, the crystal on the temple floor pulsed. It floated back into the air glowing gold. Not blue, not red, gold. The color of a true soul bond. Gasps turned into silence. The temple was frozen. No one could deny it now. The bond had awakened, not with a prince, not with a warrior, but with a human, a simple man with kind eyes and a quiet soul. Lenari felt it deep in her chest. The warmth, the pull, the light. It was not a dream this time. It was real. Eli looked at her, surprised. What is this? He whispered. It's what they said was impossible, she replied. The king's voice boomed across the temple. This bond is illegal, he said. It must be broken. No, Lenari said sharply. Her voice cut through the air like lightning. I choose this bond, not for power, not for duty, but for truth. The council stood, stunned. Never in their history had a royal disobeyed the final ruling. Never had a soul bond appeared with an outsider, and yet here it was, glowing before their eyes. Lenari stepped forward. If you wish to exile me, then do it. Right, but I will not lie to my soul. Eli looked confused, but moved beside her without hesitation. The golden bond string between them glowed stronger. And in the silence, many citizens watching began to bow not to the king, not to the council, but to them, for the first time. The people saw what truth looked like, and they knew, deep down, that everything was about to change. Asterisk, the palace locked down the moment Lenari returned. She was no longer a princess by title but still one by blood. Guards moved through every hall. Nobles whispered behind closed doors. The council ordered emergency meetings. And her father refused to speak to her. Lenari sat alone in her room, her bare fingers still tingling from Eli's touch. That moment in the temple played in her mind again and again. The way the bond crystal lit up, the warmth in her chest, the shock in his eyes. She had never felt anything like it before, not in 5 ceremonies, not with any suitor, not even in dreams. She stared at her hand. It still glowed faintly when she thought of him, not visible to others, but she felt it. Like a thread running through her soul. It pulsed softly, like a heartbeat, not her own. Outside, the world was roaring. News had already spread to other cities. Even off-world, the galaxy was talking. The alien princess bonded with a human. Is this the start of peace or the end of tradition? Some called it beautiful, others called it betrayal. Eli, meanwhile, had been taken by the guards, not into a prison, but to a private chamber far underground. He was watched day and night, fed simple food, given no answers. He didn't fight, didn't argue, he just waited, confused but calm. Late that night, Lenari broke protocol. Wearing a dark cloak, she escaped her royal chamber and slipped into the servant tunnels. She moved silently, her heart pounding, guided by the invisible string pulling inside her chest. She found him in the lower chambers, sitting quietly on the edge of a stone bench, staring at the wall. When he looked up and saw her, his face softened. You came, he said quietly. I had to. She whispered, stepping closer. He stood slowly, unsure what to do. I didn't mean for any of this, he said. I don't even understand what happened. Lenari smiled weakly. Neither do I, but I feel something, Eli, something I've never felt before. He nodded. So do I. She reached out her hand, and he didn't hesitate. Their fingers touched. And this time, it wasn't just warmth. A golden wave of light shimmered around them, soft, gentle, but real. The bond string between them glowed bright for a moment, then faded into their skin. They stood there, hands locked, eyes wide. No pain, no force, just truth. Eli spoke first. "Is this what bonding means for your kind?" Lenari nodded slowly. "Yes, but this is different." "How?" he asked. "It's not supposed to happen with humans," she said. "But the bond doesn't care about rules." Suddenly, footsteps echoed down the tunnel. Lenari pulled her hand away, the glow vanishing in an instant. 3 royal guards appeared, eyes cold, weapons raised. "Step away from him, Lady Lenari," one of them ordered. "I'm not a threat," Eli said calmly, raising his hands. "She's not under your command," he added. The guards didn't move. One of them stepped closer. "The king has summoned her." "Then I'll go," Lenari replied firmly. But as she turned to leave, her hand brushed Eli's again, and the faint gold glow returned for half a second. All 3 guards froze. They saw it, they felt it. One of them whispered, "It's true." Lenari was taken to her father's private chamber. He stood with his back to her, hands behind his back, staring out the tall glass window. "You humiliated this family," he said, without turning. "I followed my soul," she replied, steady and calm. "You bonded with a lesser species," he spat, turning toward her. "Do you understand the danger?" Lenari didn't flinch. "I understand what truth feels like, father." The king slammed his fist into the table. "Do you think love matters more than law?" She walked closer, her voice soft but unshaking. "I think truth matters more than law." Fear. The king sighed deeply. He looked older than she remembered. "Do you know what will happen now?" he asked. She nodded. "Yes, and I'm not afraid." There was a long silence. Then he whispered, "You sound just like your mother." Lenari stepped back, surprised. She once told me the same thing," he said, "before she died. Before." The bond took her joy away. He looked away again. "I should banish you," he said. "I should sever the bond while there's still time." "But you won't," Lenari said quietly. The king didn't answer. He simply waved his hand. "You have until the next sunrise," he said. "Then the council votes, if they choose exile." "I cannot stop them." Lenari left the room. Slowly, but inside her heart, the string between her and Eli pulsed stronger. No matter what the council decided, no matter how the galaxy screamed, she had found something more powerful than law, more dangerous than tradition, a touch, a bond, a soul connection that refused to break. The suns rose slowly over the capital, but peace did not rise with them. The city was shaking. Not from war, not from storms, but from whispers, from every corner of every district. Voices buzzed like fire under skin. The princess bonded with a human, impossible, unnatural, sacred. Some knelt and called it a sign of destiny. Others marched with anger, calling it betrayal. Protests broke out in the marketplaces. Quiet prayers echoed in temples. News feeds couldn't stop playing the moment her hand in his, the golden glow between them in the palace. The council was already meeting before dawn. 12 of the highest lords seated in a cold circle of power. Each one older than Eli's entire species' space age. They did not smile. They did not joke. They discussed law, tradition, exile, and punishment. Outside the chamber, Lenari stood alone. She could feel the string pulling gently toward Eli. It gave her strength but also fear. The council could end it all. They could vote to sever the bond. They had the ancient tools. And if they could kill him, maybe her too. She wasn't afraid for her own life. But the thought of him being harmed because of her made her chest ache. For the first time in her life, she wanted to scream not because she was angry, but because she finally cared. Eli was being held in the observation dome, a large glass tower with guards watching his every move. He sat quietly, looking out at the sunrise. He didn't understand everything, but he understood enough. They were afraid of something they couldn't control. He thought about the look in Lenara's eyes. That strength, That pain, that lonely spark she hid from the galaxy, he didn't know if they would survive what was coming. But he knew something had changed inside him and he would never go back. Suddenly, the doors burst open. Lenari walked in, past the guards. They didn't try to stop her. Maybe they were just as afraid of what she would say. Eli stood up quickly. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "I had to see you," she whispered. They moved close, inches apart. The string between their hearts pulsed again. She reached up and touched his cheek gently. "I don't know what will happen," she said, "but I needed to." "Feel this again." Eli placed his hand over hers. "Then let's face it together," he said. At that moment, a loud sound echoed across the tower, a gong heavy, ancient, final. It meant one thing: the council had reached a decision. Lenari turned slowly. "They voted," she said. Eli nodded once. "Then let's go hear what they decided." The throne hall was packed with nobles, leaders, priests, and even off-world visitors. Everyone wanted to see the outcome. The king stood in front, wearing his crown of light. But his face was shadowed by sorrow. Lenari entered first, her steps calm. Eli followed, quiet but unshaken. When the crowd saw them together, the room buzzed like a storm, but neither of them stopped. They stood at the center of the hall, before the 12 council chairs. One elder stood to speak. "Princess Lenari," he began, "you are no longer a legal heir, but your soul bond has awakened a bond we cannot deny." The hall went silent. No bond like this has ever been recorded. He said, "Between alien and human, between royalty and outsider. This could change the path of our species." The elder looked around, then slowly turned back. To her, "Our vote was not easy," he said, "but it was unanimous. You are not to be exiled." Gasps filled the room. Eli blinked in surprise, but, the elder continued, "You are not to rule either. You are free to remain together, but outside the royal bloodline. From this moment, your name is removed from the thrones." Path Lenari didn't cry. She didn't fall. She simply nodded. "I accept," she said. Eli gently squeezed her hand. The king's voice rose, loud and sharp. "This is foolish," he said. "They will tear our world apart." "No," Lenari said calmly. "Maybe they will finally rebuild it." That evening, the palace halls grew quiet. The guards no longer followed her. The servants bowed not out of fear but out of respect. In the garden where they first met, Lenari sat beside Eli. She looked up at the stars and said, "I was meant to rule a kingdom. But maybe I was born to heal it instead." Eli smiled at her. "And I was just supposed to fix broken pipes," he said. She laughed softly. "You still are." She whispered, "Just now, it's my heart." And in that peaceful silence, the bond string between them pulsed again. Not loud, not glowing, not dramatic. Just true. The days that followed were not peaceful. They were full of whispers, threats, and warnings. Some planets sent messages of support, calling Lenari a symbol of change, but others declared her dangerous. "Destroy the bond," they demanded. "Protect tradition," they cried. The galaxy had never seen this before, an alien princess bonding with a human. Not for power, not by law, but by choice. And the galaxy wasn't ready for it. Eli was told to leave the palace for his safety. The council gave him an escort ship, silent and fast. "No one will follow," they promised. But Lenari knew better. Enemies would come not for Eli's power, but for his heart. For the bond they feared, she stood at the docking bay, staring at him as he packed a small bag. He didn't argue, didn't beg. He just looked at her and asked, "Are you sure this is what you want?" Lenari nodded. "I'm not going to let them tear this apart," she said. "You're giving up everything." He whispered. "I already did," she replied. "All that's left is you." As he turned to leave, she stepped forward and kissed his forehead. "I'll come find you," she whispered. Eli smiled, but behind his calm eyes was worry. She watched the ship vanish into the sky, and she felt the bond string stretch but not break. It was still there, glowing faintly inside her. A quiet promise between souls, but the threat came sooner than expected. 3 nights later, her royal chamber exploded. The guards barely survived. She was not inside. She had been walking in the garden alone, thinking about Eli. That walk saved her life. The message was clear. Some wanted her dead, not punished. Not exiled, but erased. The king sent her a secret message. No guards. No cameras, just a coded whisper. "Leave this world," he said. "They will never stop. Not until you're gone. I can protect your name, but not your life." Lenari didn't reply. She walked into the strategy chamber, scanned the galactic star maps, and found Eli's route. He had been sent to a quiet moon called Dorea's Rest. No cities, just forests and sky. But now she feared even that place wasn't safe. She didn't ask permission. She stole a scout vessel from the hangar at night. Small, fast, unarmed, but enough to reach him. She wore no crown, no symbol of royalty, only a simple cloak and the quiet fire inside her heart. It took 2 days to reach the outer system. When she arrived, the stars above Daria's Rest were wrong. The communication satellites were offline. And Eli's ship was missing from the docking logs. Her heart began to race. She flew low across the tree-covered surface, scanning for any trace of his presence. Then she saw it. A signal, faint, buried in static. She locked onto it and followed it to a deep valley. Smoke rose from the trees. His ship had crashed, burned, damaged, silent. She landed quickly and ran through the forest, her legs cut by branches, her breath tight in her chest. She called his name again and again. "Eli. Eli, where are you?" Then she heard it, a weak voice from behind the rocks. "I knew you'd come." He was hurt, bleeding, but alive. He had fought off attackers, pirates, mercenaries. Someone had paid them well, but he hadn't broken, even half-conscious. He clutched a small device, the bond crystal she had given him before he left. She knelt beside him, placed his hand in hers. The golden light flickered between their palms. The bond was still alive. "Don't move," she said, tears falling down her face. "I'm taking you home." "I don't have a home," he whispered. "You do now," she replied. She activated the emergency beacon, but she knew backup wouldn't come in time, so she lifted him, carried him through the forest, step by step, bleeding, crying but not stopping. Every inch felt like a war, but she didn't let go. Because now she wasn't just fighting for him, she was fighting for both of them. By the time they reached her ship, she was shaking. She patched him up, used all the medicine she could find. And when he opened his eyes again, she was beside him, holding his hand. "You came for me," he said, voice hoarse. "I will always come for you," she said, "even if the galaxy wants me dead." Eli smiled weakly. "Then, let's give them something to fear." And above them, the stars shimmered silently, unaware that the bond they tried to kill was only growing stronger. 3 weeks passed since Lenari carried Eli from the burning forest. He was healing, slowly, carefully, but fully. The wounds on his body faded faster than the ones in her heart. Every day she checked his pulse, changed his dressings, and stayed by his side. She barely slept, barely ate, but she never let go of his hand, not even once. They were hiding in the outer systems now, far from her father's world. The galaxy had calmed down for now. The headlines were changing again, but the bond between Lenari and Eli remained strong. Glowing quietly beneath their skin, he walked again after 13 days, spoke with strength after 16, laughed again on the 17th, and on the 21st day, He took her hand and said, "I think it's time we stop hiding." She looked at him, surprised. "There are still people who want to end us," she said. "And there are others who want to follow us," Eli replied. "We didn't break the galaxy." He added with a small smile, "We might have opened it." Lenari thought about those words all night. She thought about the pain, the fear, the judgment. But also the truth. Their bond wasn't evil. It wasn't wrong. It was just. New. She sent a message to her father, not asking for permission, just telling him what she planned to do. Then they returned. Not to the palace, not to the council halls, but to the Unity Summit, held every decade on a neutral moon. It was where species gathered to make peace, to share knowledge, to tell the truth. When Lenari stepped onto the platform with Eli beside her, the entire hall went silent. Every screen lit up. Every mouth stopped speaking. The daughter of a royal line had returned not as a princess, but as herself. And with her stood the one they called outsider, the human. She looked across the leaders of 27 worlds. And then spoke, "I am not here to ask for a crown." She said, "I am not here to demand a throne. I am here because I chose truth." Some whispered, some frowned, others watched closely. "I bonded with a human," she continued. "Not because I was forced, not because of war, trade, or duty, but because I found a soul that matched mine." Eli stepped forward. He didn't give a speech. He just looked at everyone and said, "You can fear what you don't understand, or you can try to understand it. Your choice." There was a pause, a long, heavy silence. Then one of the old ambassadors and sectoid elder from the Kalithi swarm stood up slowly. "I have seen thousands of bonds," he said, "but I have never seen one formed without control or ceremony. Perhaps the galaxy must learn again what bonding truly means." That was the start, one by one. Other leaders stood, some in support, others still unsure. But none could deny what they saw, a bond glowing gently between two different beings, some chosen by tradition, but real. Over the next weeks, Lenari and Eli were invited to speak. To schools, to cultural exchanges, even to scientific labs. They didn't come as rulers or experts. They came as proof. Lenari gave up her title fully. She didn't want the throne anymore. She had found something more powerful than a crown. Freedom. Eli returned to his work, but now he fixed more than machines. He helped connect his civilizations one wire at a time, and Lenari stood beside him. Smiling quietly, they built a small home on a green moon between both systems, half human, half alien, filled with books, lights, music, and quiet laughter. It wasn't a palace, but it felt like one. And one evening, as the two suns set across the silver horizon, Lenari stood outside with Eli beside her. She looked up at the stars, her voice soft. "Do you think they'll ever accept us completely?" Eli smiled. "Maybe not, but we're not here to be accepted." He said, "We're here to live." She took his hand. The bond pulsed again, warm, soft. "Forever," and she whispered, "Then let's live beautifully, in time, stories." We're told of them, not as rebels, not as rule breakers, but as the first. The first to show that a soul didn't care about species, that love wasn't built on bloodlines, but on choice, respect, and truth. And so, the galaxy remembered her. Not as the fallen princess, but as the princess of two worlds, the one who touched a human soul and changed everything.